Hey everyone, Spazzydragon aka Syndromes here from Discovery Freelancer, and welcome to part 2 of my questions and answers video. Today's question comes again from Samuel Hansen and reads thus. I was on my trader and I was hauling military vehicles from Rheinland to Bretonia, and I was stopped by a Bretonian police and said that I was not allowed to transport military vehicles because I didn't have authorization. They were still kind enough and let me take my goods to New London and sell it. I still got 10 million credits. If I'm not allowed to transport military vehicles, then where can I get the permission to transport it? It would help if you could tell me a way to still transport the military vehicles to Bretonia and be on good terms with the law in Bretonia. Okay, so as a new player, you were just, sadly, I forgot the name for that. Ah yes, victim. You were just a victim to pretty much the biggest circle jerk in Discovery called the Rules of Sirius. Okay, let's just take a few steps back before we start calling people names. Now, I would really love to hope that you probably already read all the server rules and you know that you actually have to memorize them. In this age of gaming, playing a multiplayer game where you actually have to memorize 2 pages worth of text is just something unheard of. Let me expand. If you were or are now a fan of Freelancer, then you probably know that once Microsoft closed the project, the Digital Anvil, Freelancer as a game never got its development tools released. All of the modding communities right now are trying their best to make new creations to add stuff to the game without the actual development tools. So there's a lot of things we can't do. One of those things, as you might have guessed, is implementing the server rules in such a way that it is pretty much not up to the player, but everything that the player shouldn't do is restricted by actual gameplay mechanics. This is just something we can't do, and that is why we have to remember all these rules. Now, a lot of players do know the server rules, and they make complete sense when you read them thoroughly. Apart from some minor spots. But there's another set of rules that most players are never told about, and which obviously don't even show up in the server rules. And those are called roleplay rules. The in-roleplay laws of the Sirius sector. Every house, Liberty, Bretonia, Gallia, Rheinland, Gassari, each of these houses have their own set of in-roleplay rules that they follow. And obviously what the police and navy and special forces player would then, enforce. So you become a victim to Bretonia rules. If you want to know more about in-roleplay rules as such, I just linked the appropriate thread on the video description. And it's just something you need to figure out depending on where you play. You always should have a small list, if you can, just write down something you know that you can't remember, and just make sure that everything's fine. Some of the biggest mistakes that I've seen so far, and one of the most common ones, is that as the player progresses from a civilian shuttle up to a transport, and then on and on, then they're probably using a trade route which runs through Liberty, because that is where you started off, and people just don't want to wander far away from home, so to speak. The problem here is that at some point they are going to hit a medium transport, and for those of you who don't know, a medium transport is pretty much something around 3,000-ish cargo. And one of the most popular ships in that is the Behemoth. It's a Rheinland transport. So obviously, as most players would have guessed by now, Rheinland is at war with Liberty. So any sort of Rheinland factions, except for ALG and only within reason, are not allowed to enter Liberty, and obviously all sorts of trade goods exiting Liberty to Rheinland are not allowed. We have an embargo for that, and at the same time there are restrictions on the ships that can enter Liberty that belong, that are manufactured by Rheinland. Sadly, one of those ships also includes the Behemoth. So you've just started off, you went for a civilian shuttle, then you get something like a civilian freighter, then you get a Camara, or maybe you get a large transport, and then you go like, oh, I'm going to buy the Behemoth. And the next time you go into Liberty, the Liberty Navy just goes like, hey, you're not supposed to be here, drop your cargo, pay a fine, get the fuck out of Liberty. And you're like, what? And yeah, that is one of the biggest problems. Every house in the game has their own set of rules, in laws, so to speak. And obviously, depending on where you fly and between which houses you fly, you should, in theory, memorize them. Practically, you don't really need to do that, because most of all, these laws are pretty sensible. You can follow them. For example, restricted goods. Like, okay, apart from military vehicles, which is the reason I can't tell, because I don't really play Bretonia all that much. It has something to do with the GRN and the war between the Bretonians and the GRN and Gallia. What other? There are obviously a wide variety of goods that are just banned in every house, and it doesn't change no matter where you go. And such commodities are what nomads, like nomad brains, nomad remains, nomad guns, cardamine artifacts, except for some cases. For example, Samura have the possibility to transfer artifacts to Kasari. What else? Pilots, friendly pilots, you should not. Basically, anything that the NPCs are going to demand you is pretty much not allowed in that house. That's probably the easiest way you can actually, follow that rule. And as far as the actual question, how to get a permit to transfer some sort of cargo, you actually need to visit that particular house's permit page if it has one. If it doesn't, just make a actual transmission on the forums in the roleplay section. Most of these links concerning like permissions and shit are actually posted inside the Laws of Sirius thread, which I already linked to the video description, so you just need to go check that out. And hopefully, if you want, you can memorize them. If you don't want, just stay away from all the goods that are just posted there. At some point, the Wikipedia page is also going to be updated, so if you go to the commodity section, it's actually going to have this neat little neat little tab that just shows the place that it's bought at the cheapest, the place that it's sold at for the most, and whether or not is it legal or illegal or restricted within whichever house it is. It's actually a very good chart. The only problem is that the Wikipedia page, by the time I'm recording this video, is horribly out of date. So it will help you to get a general feel of what to transport and what to not to transport within the house if you want to be good with the locals, or at least the lawful population of the locals. And well, everything else is pretty much up to you. Well, this was Spazzydragon. It's the question and answer video. If you have more questions, you can either comment right here and I will answer them in the next episode.